We're ready to go. All righty. Let's get underway. We've got an exciting topic today and perhaps a mini series of sorts that I think would be interesting. We covered this topic well over a year ago, but I wanted to hit it again. And if you're taking notes, this is all about self-awareness. Self-awareness. As a leader, you really have got to be self-aware. Being aware of others is bonus material, but the foundation of becoming a leader is self-awareness, according to a number of authors. So the last couple of weeks, if you've tuned in, we've talked a good bit about transformational vocabulary, right? How many people are practicing changing words, taking negative words and mutating them to something useful and positive? Very good. There's also, I thought of another transformational vocabulary word. Everybody talks about upselling. It might be kind of cool to upserve. Yeah? So we can upserve people rather than just upselling them. So that has a different connotation. So I thought I'd throw that out. How many of you had a chance last week to get those morning power questions and evening power questions and have little discussions around those? Anybody? Let's see. One person. Okay, good. Two. Nice. Thank you. Well, I would encourage you, especially if you're in a group office situation, that you look at those questions and have a quick discussion. What am I grateful for? What am I proud of? Who do I love? Who loves me? Those are some good questions to ask. And then at night, what did I learn today? How has today been an investment in my future? And what have I given today? Those are great questions to ask in the evening after work. So some of you can ask those after we hang up. Okay, so let's talk about self-awareness. Self-awareness enables you to bring your best self to other people. And the reason why I'm covering this topic is that I've been reading a lot on it, and studies show that only at about 10 to maybe 15% of leaders are self-aware. Only 10, and that kind of shocked me, because if I said, how many of you feel like you know yourself pretty well? Everybody go, yeah. But these studies show that we're actually not as accurate in how we think about ourselves internally and how others perceive us. So we're going to explore this a little bit. All right, so people with low self-awareness. How many of you know people who are not aware of how they come across? Anybody? Yeah, and they're usually irritating or dissatisfied with themselves, or they're ineffective at work. And if you've known somebody like that, they're usually just totally unaware. Some people that are have low self-awareness are insensitive. They are uncaring. They talk too much. You know, I was swimming this morning with my triathlete buddies, and one of them is a pediatric brain surgeon. Yes, you heard it, a pediatric brain surgeon. And he is, according to some of the coaches, the most oppressive parent to his young children that you can imagine. That he pushes them unbelievably. And today he started talking to me in the next lane, and he was just talking about, I mentioned something about music, because I wear these MP3 players that you can swim with and listen to music. They're kind of cool. And so I'm listening to music. He asked me what I was listening to. And as soon as I told him, he immediately launched into, he goes, well, I play in lots of bands, and I have a number of guitars, and I have about 23 different, I have a Stratocaster, Telecaster. And he just went off. And I was politely listening to him, but he was just talking about himself too long, and right in the middle of practice. I'm like, what is happening here? He was completely unaware. How many of you know people like that, who are just like, no matter what happens, the conversation turns back. It's like, it's about me again. Nice. But enough about me. Let's talk about me. What do you think about me? That's kind of their line of questioning. So anyway, I have been accused, since I'm talking about me now, there was a time when I was very much not self-aware. I used to be a lot more flat emotionally, and people couldn't read how I was coming across. I was sort of emotional, like not emotional, or more deadpan on the surface. I mean, I had somebody ask me, they said, are you having a bad day? I said, no. I said, I'm fine. And they said, well, you should let your face know that. And I was like, okay, thank you. That didn't feel that good. But, and oftentimes what I found is that, and all of us tend to do this, we tend to take a strength that we have, and we're going to talk about strengths and weaknesses in upcoming calls, but we'll take a strength and we'll overdo it, you know, because that's what we're used to and that's what we're good at, and that's what we get affirmation from. So one of my strengths, so some people say, would be a sense of humor or using sarcasm. So when I went to employing sarcasm a lot, people got used to that, and then they couldn't tell when I was being straight up honest and when I was joking around or being sarcastic. And so I would have conversations with people and they would say, are you being sarcastic? And I'm like, no, this is really what I think, you know. And it was frustrating. But this was all an issue with me not being aware of how I was coming across. So really key, this topic. So let me give you just a few writing. Some of you aren't taking notes yet. You're like, well, give me something I can write down. Let me give you a thought, and then I'm going to give you 3 ways to learn who you are. All right. A long time ago, last summer, we talked about scotomas. S-C-O-T-O-M-A-S, a scotoma, or a blind spot. A blind spot is something you are unaware of. And so I read an author who said this: your blind spots block your best service to others. And say I'm repeating it, so that means, this must be important. Blind spots block your best service to others. So that which you are not aware of will hinder you in your business. Whether you're making calls, whether you're a clothier out there face-to-face with people, your blind spots, the things you are not aware of in your life and how you come across will hinder you. So there are 3 ways to learn who you are. Let me go through these. Number 1, which I like this. Your anger reveals your values. Think about that. Your anger reveals your values. What is happening in and around you when you're angry about something? Think about something that makes you mad. All right? Everybody got something? You can talk about this when we hang up. You see what you want but aren't getting, and that's what creates this anger. I remember when I was younger, you know, I was not political when I was in my 20s. I could have cared less what was going on around me, really. And then I had children. And when I had children, I suddenly became more interested in what the government was foisting on us as citizens. And it made me mad. I got angry. So I could just sit and watch the TV and throw things, or I could do something about it. So when I was in my 30s, every year I would go to Washington, D.C. with an organization, and we would go lobby our senators and representatives and tell them what we thought. I mean, politely, that we said, here's what we like, here's how we appreciate you voting. And we tried to make an impact, because those things made me mad. And that revealed my values, you know, because it showed me, if I'm willing to get angry about it, then that is a value in my life. Okay, so your anger reveals your values. All right, here's another thing, and I want you to think about this for yourself. I found out that one of my values is I like to have everything working, especially around the house. Things need to be fixed and functioning around our home, and when they're not working, it's kind of, I don't know, it causes a degree of stress. So you might be different. There'll be different things that anger you. I don't know what happens in traffic. If you're in traffic, if you're like driving and you're like, curse you, I don't know what value that is other than my time is valuable, get out of my way. But your anger is a great way to figure out a value that may be hidden. So that leads to good self-awareness. All right, cool. Number 2, another way to learn who you are is through stress. Stress reveals weaknesses. Think about that, grasshopper. Stress reveals weaknesses. What situations bring out your worst? Think about that. Write them down. What situations bring out my worst behavior? You know, sometimes because I do like to be in control and I like to do things well and I have pretty high standards, if there's too much to do and I'm not able to do it all well, and I can't quite get it right, it's a little overwhelming, which now, if you know our new transitional vocabulary, you would say it's underwhelming. But I feel stressed when I'm not ready, you know? I remember whenever we would get together with my former rock band, which happened somewhat recently. I've talked about it on these calls. And I would literally, if you don't play for like 5 or 10 years much, and then suddenly you're in concert and people are paying money to come hear you and there's an actual crowd out there, it can be stressful. So I would actually have nightmares about, you know, being on stage and like, I can't remember any of these chords. Have you guys ever thought of that? So that stress revealed a weakness, like I am not ready for this concert and I need to practice. So I did. So anyway, when are you stressed? What does that say about you? It's important to know who you aren't. Here's another thought, and this is kind of twisted, so you're going to have to listen. It's important to know who you aren't, but don't use authenticity as an excuse to be mediocre. Now, nobody really got that, so let me explain. I've had people say, and this rationalized their behavior. This was a weakness. They just said, hey, dude, I'm not good with people. Or I've always been irritable. You know I'm annoying. That's just who I am. Okay. If anybody ever says, hey, that's just who I am. I know I'm an a-hole. That's just how I am. They are completely writing off their ability to change. So under a stressful situation, if they turn into an a-hole, which is short for asshole, then, and they justify it and try to explain it away, that is revealing a weakness that they probably need to work on, right? So if you hear people talk about that, just, you know, they're walking all over team members, they're difficult to be around the office, improving emotional intelligence, or they've got to do that, or they've got to find roles for people that can complement their weakness. But most of the time they need to just work on that. So stress will reveal your weakness. Number 3, another way to find out who you are on the positive side is that positive energy reveals passion and strengths. Positive energy will show you your passion and your strengths. When you're selling or when you're on the phone, notice when your energy is high, notice when work is easy, notice when things click. And ask yourself, what does this experience of flow say about who I am? Okay? So figure out, some of you are really good operating by yourself, right? And that's when you can really get things done and you feel great. Like when you're ticking things off your list, you're like, yes, that gives me energy. That's a passion of mine to get it all accomplished. I mean, I function better in groups than when I'm soloing, right? So I'm one of those people that likes meetings. I like to be around people. So, and I notice that gives me energy. All right. So notice in your job what gives you positive energy, and that will show you your passion and your strengths. That gives you more self-awareness. Okay. So anger is a great way to figure out who you are. Stress is your friend because it shows you your weaknesses. And then third, you can look at when you have more energy and say, this is something I'm good at. I need to spend more time doing this if possible, if it's legal. All right. Now, let me hit real quick 4 ways that you can expand your self-awareness. And we'll build on these if we take another chapter here. So, great way to build self-awareness. And I want you guys to talk about ways you do this when we finish here in a couple minutes. One way to build self-awareness is quiet introspection. When you reflect, quiet introspection. You can reflect on your frustrations from the day to learn your values, right? But what a great way. If you take 5 minutes at the end of the day when your shift finishes and just say, what did I do well? what do I need to work on? And if I could go through today and live it again, what would I do differently? That is a way to introspect. Most people don't. They go, I'm done, day's over, see ya. And they just go home and, stare at a TV. That just has that. What that causes you to do is that all your days of your life just blend together. So some introspection is a useful thing. How many of you journal? Journal. You write things down in a little. Erica does. Good job. Congratulations. Smart thing to do because it helps you introspect, right? All right. Number 2, second way to increase and expand your self-awareness is to ask for feedback. Seek feedback. Other people help us know who we are. I have learned more about myself from other people than sitting around thinking about myself, right? Because we all assess ourselves pretty highly, but other people help us know who we are. Notice when you're surprised by feedback, like if it confirms something in you that you thought you knew about yourself. Like the other night, I was at a big fundraising dinner for one of the colleges where I teach, and they were interviewing students randomly through the crowd, and they had one, Amy Jackson stood up and they said, well, what's been your experience here at the college? They were trying to build testimonials. And she said, well, she talked about how her classes were going. And she said, my favorite class is Professor McCroskey's class. Is he here? And I was like, I'm over here. I was right in the middle of a bite of chicken. And I was like, and I was not expecting that. But you know what? I felt good because I know I'm a good teacher. And I was like, yes, self-awareness, confirmation. I'm good at this. And I'm not embarrassed to tell people that. It's just that confirmed what I knew about myself. How many of you have heard someone say something about you that was disconfirming? Like they said something to you that shocked you. They're like, really? I'm like that? That is useful information. And that has happened a number of times over the decades of being in business, where somebody gave me feedback that wasn't very comfortable, or I asked for feedback and I didn't really want to hear the answer, but I did, and it was good. Because if I'm blind to things I'm doing poorly, then I mess up. Blind spots prevent you from bringing your best self to other people, right? So sometimes other people will, and you know what? When you get married, if you develop a partner at some point, a lifelong relationship like that, they are expert at giving you feedback that you don't want. But it's good for you. It helps you with your self-awareness, All right, I'll save stories on that. All right, number 3, we're going to expand more in the future. But number 3, some authors recommended storytelling. Storytelling. Now this sounds weird. But they recommend that you tell a story about yourself to like a new friend or a new acquaintance. You share a story. Now, not one that lasts 45 minutes, but share a story about yourself and then ask them this question. Who do you think I am based on this story? That is different. That is a different way of coming at life. Who do you think I am based on that story I just shared with you? And just see what they say. We're gonna develop that storytelling in a future call. All right. So more on that later. And then 4th and finally, this is kind of important, especially if you're becoming partner or if you are moving up the chain of command in terms of management. Be aware of your impact. Be aware of your impact. Self-awareness includes respecting your impact on others. This is something I was completely blind to when I was in my 30s and 40s. Because I had a bully pulpit at my previous job at Southwestern, and I was on stage a lot, and I spent time with people, the words that I spoke to them, although sometimes I was really flippant, I'm using hand motions that indicate flippancy or glibness. I would just say things that would kind of roll off the top of my head, and people would either not know how to take them or I didn't put much weight into the words. I wasn't being serious, perhaps, and they remembered it. Good things and bad things. I had so many university students come up to me and said, you know what? 3 years ago, you met me at this meeting. And I'm like, really? And I didn't say that, but I'm like, oh yeah, that's great. And they said, you said this to me, and it really hit me or helped me or hurt me, and I honestly could not remember having said that. But what that taught me was I have impact on other people, and I've got to be aware of that impact. And sometimes if that whole communication cycle that you studied in communications classes, where you have a sender and a receiver and there's an output and they go through a filter, you know, basic communication stuff. I mean, what we mean to say and what other people hear are sometimes vastly different. Okay? So you have to adjust your communication to make sure that the sender is hearing you correctly. That's a different talk, so I won't go into that. But be aware of your impact. I was often unaware of my impact on others, and you can really, and you know what? Some of you had children. Yeah, as parents, we've really got to watch what we say, because we have massive impact on our children, and sometimes we're not even aware of it. So all this comes together. So here's the deal. Here's what we talked about. 3 ways to learn who you are. Number 1, look at your anger. It reveals your values. 2, your stress will reveal your weaknesses, which is good, all right, even though it's not fun. And then 3rd, look at where you get positive energy. That shows you your strength zone, right? So to expand your self-awareness briefly, we talked about introspection, thinking, reflecting. 2, we talked about seeking feedback from others. So many times I would ask people, this is a good idea. Get with a friend who knows you well and just say, you know what? Tell me how I come across. Something went wrong with this interaction. What did I do? And ask for it. You know, you want that feedback. 3rd is storytelling. More on that later. 4th is just being aware of the impact that you have. Okay? So we will kind of venture down this highway just a little bit, because it is so key to your leadership growth. And I encourage you to really think about who you are, how you're interacting, not only up here in your own head, but also with other people that you encounter. All right? It will affect your business. So that's all. Any comments from the gallery? Anything this made you think of? Or do you know someone that is keenly self-aware, and what does that mean, and how do they come across? Or someone who's the opposite, who's like hurtling through space, their own little ship? Anybody? Let me look. No. Okay. Everybody's being introspective. Good. Well, thanks for tuning in. You guys have done a great job. We will talk more next time, and we're going to probably get into more strength zones and discovering strengths and weaknesses. So more on that later. All right. So keep growing, keep learning, keep leading. Signing off. Have a good week. Bye-bye. Bye, Uni.